What happens when a 13-year-old girl with an angelic voice dares to sing for her mother, and a white heiress decides the stage isn't for her? What happened next left the entire auditorium speechless and forever changed a school where privilege had always spoken louder than truth. Nobody in that auditorium saw it coming. Not the trustees with their silk scarves and cufflinks, not the local news anchor who came for a photo op, and certainly not Harper Westbrook, who thought the whole damn show was a tribute to her family's donations. But there she was, Layla Moore, 13 years old, hair in fresh braids, velvet dress the color of midnight, standing in the spotlight with nothing but her voice and a mother's hope packed in every note. She wasn't there to show off. She didn't come to make a scene. Layla came to sing. That's it. A simple act, a song, a voice, and yet somehow it unraveled the mask off an entire institution. She'd spent weeks practicing in the school janitor's closet because the rehearsal room had been hijacked by a yoga for gifted youth elective. Translation: a quiet place for privileged kids to sip kombucha and reflect. She didn't complain. She practiced between mops and old math books, letting her voice grow strong in the dark. The night of the gala, the scene was pristine. Curtains in champagne gold, polished chandeliers, lighting so soft it looked like the lobby of a five-star hotel. Tiffany sconces, a catered bar, the school's crest projected proudly above the stage. White faces filled every seat, perfumed air thick with entitlement. It was the Bellevue Academy Spring Gala, where diversity meant one black girl was allowed on the stage for precisely 3 minutes. But Layla wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about her mama, about how she worked back-to-back night shifts at the clinic, smiled through exhaustion, and still found the strength to press Layla's dress for the concert. That woman hadn't had a day off in months, and here was her baby girl standing in front of all these people, singing her heart out. The music began, and Layla stepped forward. The opening notes of Rise Up filled the hall, and then her voice. Lord have mercy, that voice. It didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. Strong, clear, rich as a church organ on Sunday morning. The room stilled. Even the bored millionaires looked up from their drinks. Every syllable hit like prayer. Every verse a love letter to resilience. It was her truth poured into melody. And just when it reached the most tender, most powerful moment, snatch. A pale hand ripped the mic from Layla's grip. Harper Westbrook. Let me be clear. Harper wasn't just another student. She was Bellevue royalty, daughter of Richard Westbrook, who owned half the hotels between Boston and San Diego, president of the Media and Influence Club. A girl so used to getting her way, she probably thought traffic lights were personal suggestions. She marched on stage like she paid rent for it, and with a voice chilled colder than ice sculpture hors d'oeuvres, she said, "Not on my stage." Just like that. 5 words. But the damage had already been done. The room didn't erupt. It froze like somebody had sucked the oxygen straight out the walls. A champagne glass clinked to the floor. Someone gasped. But no one moved. Because see, Bellevue teaches its people early. When power speaks, you sit still and act like it makes sense. Layla stood there with her hands by her sides. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She didn't flinch. She just stood, staring, breathing, holding the silence like a weapon. In that moment, she wasn't a little girl anymore. She was a monument, small frame, big spirit, alone in front of a room that didn't know what to do with her strength. Harper, she strutted back to her seat, smug as a cat that broke something expensive, and knew nobody would say a word. In her mind, she had won. She owned the mic. Therefore, she owned the narrative. Meanwhile, backstage, a woman with tired eyes and hospital scrubs under her coat was pushing past waitstaff. Mama Moore wasn't supposed to be there, but when the mic came out of her daughter's hand, something in her soul flipped. She wrapped Layla up in her arms. "You did it, baby," she whispered. "You did it right." Layla didn't answer, just sighed, her voice dry, like the fire inside her had used up all the air. "If I had stayed silent, would that have been even more right?" she asked. Half an hour later, when the audience had mostly cleared out, the school's principal finally appeared. Miss Ellis, gray blouse, designer pearls, and that polished tone they teach at country clubs and PR training. "Layla, what happened tonight? It was unfortunate," she said, voice dipped in fake sweetness like a donut that sat too long. Harper was just concerned about the event's structure. "She shut me down in front of everyone," Layla replied calmly, coldly. "Let's not exaggerate, dear. Her reaction may have been misplaced, but we all want what's best for the school." "You mean what's best for her father's donations," Layla muttered. Ellis gave a tight smile. That kind adults give when they know they've been called out but still need to pretend they're in charge. "Let's not turn this into a larger issue. Conflict serves no one." That was the moment Layla understood. They weren't going to protect her. Not from embarrassment, not from injustice, and sure as sugar, not from Harper. If she had been white, this whole story would have ended differently. Maybe there would have been an apology. Maybe Harper would have been asked to step down from her little club. But this was a misunderstanding. Next day at school, you could hear a pin drop in the halls, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a too-tight sweater. Some kids avoided her eyes. Others stared like she was a ghost. She became that girl, the one who made everyone uncomfortable by speaking up. India, her only real friend, found her by her locker. "We all saw it," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't do something." "Nobody did," Layla said. "That was the problem." Later in the cafeteria, Aiden from the drama club dropped into the seat across from her. "Your voice is unreal," he said. "What Harper did was—" He didn't finish the sentence. "Tell that to the principal," Layla cut him off. "Or better yet, her dad." Meanwhile, Harper was walking around like she hadn't just snatched a mic from a kid in front of an entire town. Smiling, waving, the whole 9 yards. Like her privilege had a short-term memory. And then came the kicker. Layla was called into the vice principal's office. Not to apologize to her. Not to investigate Harper. No, to discipline her. For performing an unscheduled song. That's right. They pulled out the fine print. Even though her song was on the approved list, even though her performance had been rehearsed, even though none of it would have been a problem if she'd looked a little more like Harper. The vice principal leaned in, faux concern in her eyes. "You understand how emotional that song was, Layla. It made some guests uncomfortable." "What about how I felt when my mic was taken?" Silence. "You're a strong girl," the woman said. "We see that, but I'm not Harper." That night, Layla didn't cry. She didn't vent. She sat on the edge of her bed, picked up her phone, opened TikTok, and hit record. "My name is Layla Moore. I'm a black girl, and I sang a song for my mom. But I was cut off, because I was told, not on their stage, but my voice, it's mine, and it's not going anywhere." She uploaded the video, put down her phone, and went back to doing homework, because dignity doesn't stop when the camera's off. 3 hours later, 20,000 views. By morning, yan badayram. Comments poured in like rain on a tin roof. "My daughter lived this. This baby is a movement. Let her sing at the White House, if not on their stage." And back at school, silence. But this time, it wasn't control. It was fear. Something had shifted. And what happened next would turn Bellevue Academy upside down. What happened next changed everything. And you don't want to miss how it all unfolded. When Layla Moore walked into Bellevue Academy that Monday morning, the silence was thick enough to slice into cubes and serve on cafeteria trays. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. No, this was the kind that hums with tension, with eyes watching, with whispers packed so tight behind closed mouths they threatened to spill out all over the polished floors. Everyone knew what had happened. Of course they did. The video was everywhere by now. The mic snatch heard around the internet. But here's the thing about institutions like Bellevue. Places polished with centuries of privilege and perfected indifference. They don't erupt. They simmer. Scandals are never confronted. They're dressed in blazers and buried under committee meetings. That morning, the school's intercom crackled on like nothing happened, and a too-cheerful voice made the first announcement. "Attention students. The music club will be temporarily suspended while we assess internal matters. Thank you for your understanding. No mention of the incident. No names, just internal matters. As if voices were glitches. As if Layla's voice had somehow broken the whole machine. She walked to her locker, and there it was. A small pink post-it note stuck on the metal door. Stay strong, it said in neat, anonymous handwriting. Probably one of the same kids who sat in that audience Friday night, eyes locked on their phones, pretending they didn't see a black girl publicly humiliated on stage. Hypocrisy had a scent, and around here it smelled like expensive shampoo and brand new designer sneakers. Her first class of the day was history, where Mr. Clark was once again lecturing on the civil rights movement as if he hadn't spent Friday night staring at the ceiling tiles during a very real moment of injustice just feet away. Who can name a symbol of the struggle for equality? He asked, pointer in hand, voice proud. Layla raised her hand, slowly, purposefully. A microphone, she said. Mr. Clark blinked. It can be taken from your hand, but not from your spirit. The classroom froze. A moment passed where even the clock seemed to hesitate. Then, without a word, Mr. Clark coughed, adjusted his tie, and changed the topic to the Emancipation Proclamation. Irony wasn't just in the textbooks anymore. It was sitting at the front row, breathing heavy. At lunch, Aiden from the drama club slid into the seat across from her, guilt painted across his face like a bad stage blush. They had no right to discipline you. If you want, I'll write something, like a statement. Layla didn't even look up from her tray. Save your ink for the chemistry cheat sheet. Statements don't mean a thing unless your last name's Westbrook. And she meant it. Still, the spark had been lit. By the time she got to her last class, 3 upperclassmen approached her with a phone and nervous energy. Hey, we're doing a podcast, one of them said, on school politics, you know, and we want to talk about what happened. The racism, the double standards. Can we interview you? She shrugged. Sure, I'm just the girl who got flagged for being emotionally excessive while singing a song for her mom. Go ahead, record it. That afternoon, their clip went live. By evening, it had made it to the parents' Facebook group, a digital war zone of conflicting privilege, denial, and rage. Some parents clutched pearls through keyboards. Children shouldn't be dragged into activism. Others came swinging, why hasn't the principal said a word about Harper? It was wildfire, controlled by no one. Meanwhile, Harper Westbrook, she was busy posting Instagram stories from a resort in Bali, spooning acai bowls with gold-plated cutlery. No captions, no acknowledgement, just the silent luxury of being untouched by consequence. The next day, Tuesday, came with its own gift. Layla got called into the principal's office. Again, twice in 1 week. A record, even for Bellevue. Miss Ellis sat behind her snow-white desk, hands folded, a mug in front of her that said, "Kindness starts with you." Oh, the irony. Layla, she began, voice dipped in syrup. We're concerned. The attention this situation is receiving, it could impact your reputation. Layla leaned forward. My reputation took the hit when your student yanked a mic out of my hands while you all sat there, pretending decorum mattered more than dignity. The principal blinked, but pressed on. This is a complicated issue. The Westbrooks are significant contributors to the school. We must be diplomatic. And I'm a daughter. I'm a student. I'm a person. So what am I? Disposable when the money's at stake? A beat of silence. If this continues, it might affect your future here, your standing, opportunities. Layla stood up. Calm, controlled, regal. My future doesn't start with your permission. It starts with my voice. Later that day, her mother had had enough. Karen Moore, in her faded scrubs and work-worn hands, sat down at their kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not just a letter, but a public statement. On Friday night, my daughter had a microphone torn from her hand. On Saturday, she was blamed. On Monday, her voice was muted altogether. My name is Karen Moore, and I'm not asking for justice. I am demanding it. Because my daughter wasn't born to be safe. She was born to be heard. She posted it to the Bellevue Parent Forum. The ripple turned into a tidal wave. Some parents stayed silent. Some demanded town hall meetings. Some even contacted local media. And that night, TikTok exploded again. A new trend emerged. Number not on my stage. Videos of students singing, testifying, telling stories. People of all ages sharing moments they were silenced, overlooked, erased. And Layla? Layla became a symbol. But here's the thing about symbols. They're not armor. They're targets. On Wednesday in the cafeteria, Harper approached her. No entourage, no smile, no screens. "You happy now?" Harper spat. "You ruined the gala." Layla barely looked at her. "Number I just wanted to sing. Now my dad's canceling Milan. He says I embarrassed the family. This your idea of justice?" Layla stood, locked eyes with her. "Justice is not having a mic snatched from you just because you're black." Harper stared at her like a child who just learned that fire burns. That truth has teeth. That wrong sometimes comes with a receipt. After school, the vice principal found Layla by her locker, pale, shaky, sweating like the truth was catching up. "There's a meeting tomorrow, emergency school board assembly, parents, staff, students. It's going to be public. We'd like you to speak." Layla didn't even blink. "I've already spoken. You all just weren't listening. This is the breaking point, the moment we've all been waiting for. The climax is right ahead, and trust me, you won't want to miss how Layla takes her voice to the center stage." The auditorium of Bellevue Academy didn't just smell of fresh polish, it reeked of preparation. The kind of preparation you do when your institution's been caught looking the other way, while injustice danced across the stage. Beneath the lemon-scented wood and velvet curtains, something heavier lingered, old fear, the kind that knows its days are numbered. The meeting was set for 5 p.m., but by 4:40, the room was already at capacity. Parents in carefully pressed suits lined the aisles, armed with legal pads and polite tension. Students, many of them dressed not in the school's khaki conformity, but in protest black, sat taller than usual. Teachers clung to the walls with that same look worn by people who've seen too much and said too little. "Please, just let me make it to retirement." On stage, the mic stood alone. One mic, positioned in the exact same spot where Layla Moore had sung just days before her voice was physically stripped from her in front of a full house. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. That microphone might as well have been a sword planted in stone. And then she arrived, Harper Westbrook, draped in a cream-colored dress that looked more like a peace offering than a fashion choice. Her expression wasn't remorseful, it was curated. That carefully pained look of someone who's been told, "Just appear sorry enough to make this go away." She sat beside her father, Richard Westbrook, hotel magnate and local benefactor, who wore his guilt the way he wore his Rolex, polished, expensive, and completely out of touch. Meanwhile, Layla sat in the front row. No stage makeup, no scripted apology, just jeans and a black t-shirt with white letters that shouted from her chest, "My voice, my power." The silence thickened as the school principal, Miss Ellis, took the stage. She cleared her throat, clutched her notes like they were a prayer book, and faced the crowd. "We've gathered here today to address a situation that has stirred deep emotions in our school community. We hope to hear from everyone." She stepped aside and passed the mic to Harper. The silence cracked, but only slightly. Harper stood, walked the steps like someone headed to a confession booth. She approached the mic, took a breath, and said, "I want to apologize if my actions were seen as aggressive." Pause, a long one. The kind of pause where excuses usually bloom. But Layla broke the rules. She performed a song that wasn't pre-approved. "I was trying to—" "Stop me," came a voice from the audience. It wasn't shouted, it was quiet, controlled, but it cut like glass. Layla stood, slowly, calmly. Her expression didn't ask for permission, it demanded attention. "May I?" she asked. Miss Ellis nodded. A little too quickly, a little too eagerly. She, like the rest of the room, knew control had already changed hands. Layla stepped onto the stage. She didn't fidget. She didn't glance at her notes, because she didn't need any. She stood in front of the microphone that once betrayed her and looked out at every face. She didn't just look. She saw. The ones who looked away last Friday. The ones who watched it happen and said nothing. and the ones now sitting with straightened backs, praying for forgiveness they hadn't yet earned. That night, Layla began, I didn't sing for applause. I sang because my voice has value, because my mother, who works nights to pay for my lunch in this school's uniform, deserved to know her daughter could stand tall in front of anyone. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Layla's eyes didn't flinch. And when I stood on this stage, I didn't expect a standing ovation. But I didn't expect to be silenced either. She turned to Harper, not with hatred, but with clarity. When you said, not on my stage, you weren't just talking to me. You were speaking for a system that's trained people to believe that being loud while black is threatening, that having emotions is dangerous unless they're softened for white comfort. A mother in the second row wiped her cheek. A father squeezed his child's hand. Truth had entered the building, and it didn't care who felt awkward. I'm not asking for Harper to be punished, Layla continued. I'm asking her to listen. I want this school to stop being a one-color theater. I want black kids to stop being statistics or tokens or diversity goals. I want to be part of the scene, not a guest in it. The silence that followed was alive. It pulsed with shame, with admiration, with the weight of recognition. And then a clap, one, then another and another. No thunder, no explosive celebration, just a slow, rising acknowledgement. People began to stand, not all at once, but deliberately, one by one, as if waking up from a long, curated dream. Harper sat still, mouth tight, eyes somewhere between confusion and something she hadn't felt in years, humility. Her father leaned over and whispered something in her ear, but by then it didn't matter. Layla had turned, walked back down the steps, head high, shoulders steady. The mic was still on, but now everyone knew whose voice it carried. 2 days later, Bellevue Academy released an official statement. We acknowledge that our response to the events of last Friday was insufficient and flawed. We are initiating an internal review, revisiting school policy, and establishing an Inclusion Advisory Council. Layla Moore has been named president of the school music club. The Westbrooks, they faded into the background. Rumors spread that Harper had been transferred to a private school out west, somewhere quiet, somewhere without consequences. But beneath her latest Instagram post, filtered and captioned with sunshine, one comment stood out. The stage may not be yours, but the silence afterward definitely is. As for Layla, 1 week later she stepped onto another stage, this time at the citywide community festival. The same velvet dress, the same song, the same voice that once rattled chandeliers and now echoed through an open-air crowd of hundreds. This time, no one took the mic. This time, the mic belonged to her. Because when a voice speaks truth, no one, not money, not tradition, not fear, can mute it. Layla's story wasn't just about a concert. It was about every stage where we were pushed off, every mic snatched, every moment we were told we were too much, too loud, too emotional. And it's about the day we stood up, said enough, and sang anyway.